Did you know parts of North Carolina can burn underground for months? Or that entire islands off the Carolina coast can disappear in a single storm and reappear miles away? How about the fact that you can find seashells thousands of feet up in the mountains? Well, the Tar Heel State is jam-packed with crazy facts like this. So buckle up because we're about to reel off 50 of the wildest facts about North Carolina that you probably never knew. Fact 50. The highest peak east of the Mississippi, rising 6,684 feet above the Carolina wilderness, sits Mount Mitchell, the highest point east of the Mississippi, a Canadian-style alpine world planted in the American South. Up here, summer feels like winter, and the air smells like Christmas, cold, sharp, and silent. Its spruce fir forest belongs hundreds of miles north, but somehow it thrives on this southern peak. The mountain is named for Elisha Mitchell, the geologist who died proving its height, and his grave still lies at the summit. On clear days, you can see more than 80 miles in every direction, a reminder that even the Appalachians still have kings. Fact 49. The desert that moves. Jockey Ridge State Park is home to the tallest living sand dunes on the entire Atlantic coast. Waves of sand that rise up to 100 ft tall and slowly migrate across the island like giant glaciers. Every gust of wind can reshape the land, swallowing fences and shifting boardwalks overnight. It's one of the few places in America where you can hang glide over what feels like a desert, then walk 10 minutes and dip your feet in the sea, a living, breathing dune field in the heart of the East Coast, where the land itself refuses to sit still. Fact 48. The highest waterfall east of the Rockies. Deep in the wild Jockey gorges, the Whitewater River suddenly dives off a cliff and keeps going. Upper White Waterfalls drops 411 ft, making it the tallest waterfall east of the Rockies. When storms roll through, the entire canyon roars as a wall of water thunders down ancient rock, throwing mist high enough to form its own clouds. You can't really get close. The terrain is too dangerous. The best you can do is stand at designated overlooks, feel the spray on your face, and realize how small you are. In a region known for gentle hills, this is nature's vertical exclamation mark. Fact 47. The deepest gorge in the eastern United States. Linville Gorge in western North Carolina earns its nickname Grand Canyon of the East, honestly and with conviction. Carved by the Linville River over millions of years, this massive chasm drops 1,500 to 2,000 ft below the surrounding rims, with some sections plunging nearly 2,800 ft deep, making it the deepest gorge in the eastern United States. The wilderness area has steep cliffs, thundering, waterfalls, and terrain so rugged it challenges even experienced hikers. Its steep slopes support a unique mix of plant communities, ranging from dry pine forest on exposed ridges to lush cove hardwoods in protected valleys. The gorge is one of the few federally designated wilderness areas in North Carolina, meaning no roads, no development, just raw, untamed nature that looks almost like it did centuries ago. Fact 46. The Earth's hidden fingerprints. From above, eastern North Carolina looks like it's been touched by something otherworldly. Thousands of oval craters scattered across the land, all tilted in the same direction. They're called Carolina Bays, and no one can agree on how they formed. Some say they're the scars of ancient meteor strikes. Others blame Ice Age winds or underground explosions. The largest, Lake Matamusket, stretches 40,000 acres, a mirror of still dark. Water surrounded by cypress and mystery. Even with satellites, sensors, and science, their exact origin remains unsolved. Nature left the evidence and then wiped out the motive. Fact 45. The river older than the mountains. Before the Appalachians even existed, this river was already flowing. The New River winds through northwestern North Carolina, and despite its name, it's anything but new. Geologists say it could be 300 million years old, making it one of the oldest rivers on Earth. Older than the mountains that surround it. Even stranger, it flows north, not south, slicing straight across the grain of the land. Its valley cuts straight through ancient amphibology rock that releases calcium-rich soil. Home to rare plants found nowhere else on the planet, this river has seen continents collide, mountains rise, and glaciers retreat, and somehow it's still flowing the wrong way. Fact 44. The mountains that used to rival the Himalayas. 500 million years ago, North Carolina was home to peaks taller than Everest's base camp. The URI Mountains in the state's Piedmont region were once towering 20,000 FT volcanoes, born from violent tectonic collisions. Today, those giants are gone, eroded into low wooded hills, barely reaching 1/100 ft. But the bones of that ancient world are still under the soil, covered in oak and hickory forest that have witnessed 500 million years of decay. Wander the trails and you'll find pottery shards and arrowheads where volcanoes once spewed lava. The Himalayas are still rising. The Oris just got tired first. Fact 43. The giant dismal swamp. Here's proof that beauty can hide in the most unlikely of places. Straddling the North Carolina-Virginia border, the Great Dismal Swamp National Wildlife Refuge protects roughly 113,000 acres of some of the most important wildlife habitat in the mid-Atlantic region. This is the largest intact remnant of a swamp that once covered more than 1 million acres. The refuge contains dense forests of bald cypress and Atlantic white cedar, along with canals dug by enslaved people in the 1700s for timber extraction and transportation. Its peat soils and decomposing vegetation create dark tannin-rich water that gives the swamp its ominous name. Despite the name, the swamp swarms with life. Black bears, bobcats, and over 200 bird species call it home. Fact 42. 4 provinces in one state. North Carolina's geography is so wildly varied that geologists divide it into 4 distinct physiographic provinces, each with its own character. Alligators sunbathe on the beaches, barrier islands, and enormous wetlands that make up the coastal plain. The Piedmont is made up of isolated monadnocks, erosion-resistant rock that rise sharply from agriculture and rolling slopes. The Blue Ridge rises steeply with rugged peaks and deep gorges, and the Mountain Province, part of the Ridge and Valley region, includes the highest summits east of the Mississippi. Elevations range from sea level to Mount Mitchell's 6,684 FT summit, a vertical span that creates a bunch of different microclimates and habitats. You can literally surf in the morning and hike above the clouds by afternoon, all without leaving the state. Fact 41. Ever-shifting barrier islands. The outer banks are beautiful, but they're living on borrowed time. They form a fragile chain of barrier islands, protecting the mainland from the Atlantic's fury. But protection comes at a cost. Ocean currents, waves, and storms constantly reshape these islands, opening and closing inlets, moving shorelines, and sometimes threatening to submerge entire communities. Since these shifting sands have made travel dangerous for generations, the region has been dubbed the graveyard of the Atlantic. The ruins of more than 2,000 ships that have sunk along these coasts are sometimes visible when storms move the sand. Rising sea levels pose an existential threat to the island's future, with some scientists predicting significant changes within this century. Fact 40. A mosaic of wetlands. North Carolina's coastal plain contains more than 40 different types of wetlands. These range from freshwater bogs and picassins, evergreen shrub bogs on acidic peat, to salt marshes and tidal flats buzzing with fiddler crabs. Picassins are particularly unique, dominated by thick vegetation and home to carnivorous plants like pitcher plants and the Venus Flytrap, which supplement their diets by digesting insects. Salt marshes, on the other hand, serve as nurseries for young fish and filter pollutants from water flowing to the ocean. In addition to supporting a wild variety of species, this wetland diversity offers vital ecosystem functions, including water filtration and flood control. Fact 39. The desert hidden in the pines. Hundreds of miles from the coast, North Carolina hides a desert no map will warn you about. The sandhills are a huge stretch of rolling dunes, remnants of an ancient shoreline blown inland by Ice Age winds when the sea retreated. Under the long leaf pines, sand runs deep for miles, forming one of the most unusual ecosystems in the East. Controlled burns keep these forests alive, mimicking the natural wildfires that once swept across them. Rare species like the red-cocketed woodpecker and pygmy rattlesnake depend on this rhythm of fire and renewal. It's a reminder that sometimes survival in nature means learning how to burn. Fact 38. The swamps that burn from below. North Carolina's Pecosins, wetlands, whose name means swamp on a hill, play by their own rules. Beneath the shrubs lies a deep bed of peat, so rich in carbon it can burn underground for months. Lightning strikes and the surface smolders invisibly, creeping through the soil until flames reappear somewhere completely different. Locals once tried to put them out, not realizing these fires are part of the ecosystem itself. The slow burn keeps the land open and nutrient poor, perfect for carnivorous plants and rare birds. In the Pecocene, destruction isn't disaster, it's maintenance. Fact 37. The world's smallest predator's only home. North Carolina is the only place on Earth where the Venus Flytrap grows naturally in the wild. And even within the state, its range is absurdly small. Within roughly 100 miles of Wilmington along the coast here, this tiny carnivore survives in wet, sandy habitats where the soil is too poor to support normal plants. So it adapted, it eats meat. Its trap closes in less than a second, one of the fastest movements in the plant kingdom. Then, it slowly digests its prey, extracting nutrients insect by insect. Habitat laws and poaching have pushed it to the edge, but laws now protect every wild plant. This isn't just a botanical curiosity. It's a living relic clinging to survival in the only place it's ever known. Fact 36. The lights no one can explain. Over the forests of Brown Mountain, strange lights rise from the darkness, glowing orbs that drift, fade, and return with unnerving consistency. For more than a century, locals and scientists have tried to explain them. Headlights, swamp gas, ball lightning, none fit. The phenomenon is so persistent, it's been observed long before electric lights existed. Cherokee legend says there's spirits searching for lost warriors. Skeptics call them illusions. But on warm, still nights, witnesses still gather on overlooks and wait. And when the horizon flickers blue and gold, even the doubters go quiet. The mystery remains as steady as the mountain itself. Fact 35. The mountain made of solid stone. Stone Mountain rises from the forest like something unearthed. A smooth granite dome that towers 600 ft above the surrounding terrain with a summit elevation of 2.35 ft. It began deep underground as molten rock cooling slowly over eons before erosion peeled back the surface to reveal the core. What's left is raw geology. One continuous block of stone with no soil, no shade, and no softness. Only lichens, grasses, and time can cling to it. Climbers test their balance on its steep friction slabs, while hikers trace waterfalls and meadows below. It's not just a mountain, it's the skeleton of the earth laid bare. Fact 34. The shallow sea behind the Outer Banks. Just behind North Carolina's barrier islands lies an inland ocean. Hamlico Sound stretches 80 kilometers long and up to 20 kilometers wide, forming the largest lagoon on the Atlantic coast. Despite covering more than 3,000 square miles, it averages only about 6 feet deep, shallow enough that storms can stir up its entire volume. Beneath the surface, huge seagrass meadows have young fish, shrimp, and crabs, making it one of the East Coast great nurseries. The sound shields the mainland from hurricanes, softening waves that would otherwise hit hard. It's both protector and provider, a massive living filter between the sea and the shore. Fact 33. Pilot Mountain's quartzite pinnacle. Pilot Mountain's quartzite knob, called Big Pinnacle, rises more than 200 feet above its base and 1,400 ft above the valley below. A landmark visible for miles, the rock is what's left of the ancient Sourtown Mountains, worn down over time until only their toughest spine remained. For Native Americans, it was a navigation beacon. For early settlers, a compass in stone. Today, peregrine falcons nest on its cliffs, and the summit remains closed to protect them. The mountain shape has appeared on everything from postcards to the Andy Griffith Show, a reminder that not all monuments are man-made. Fact 32. The Blowing Rock's updraft. At Blowing Rock, a cliff overlooking Johns River Gorge creates a natural wind tunnel with a twist. Literally, the Blowing Rock is North Carolina's oldest travel attraction, having been a popular destination since it first opened to visitors in 1933, and it's easy to see why people find it so mesmerizing. Winds blowing through the narrow canyon are forced upward by the cliff face, creating a nearly vertical updraft that can send light objects back into the sky. Visitors test the phenomenon by tossing leaves, paper, or hats over the edge and watching them float back up rather than falling. The adjacent mountain town takes its name from this natural wonder, and on winter days, the updraft can indeed send snowflakes skyward in a gravity-daying tango. Fact 31. Shadow of the bear, each. Fall at sunset, Whiteside Mountain near Cashiers creates one of nature's most titillating optical illusions. For about 2 weeks in late October, and again briefly in mid-February, the setting sun projects a bear-shaped shadow across the valley below. The shadow starts as a small, dark spot at the mountain's base, slowly grows into the walking silhouette of a bear, then disappears as dusk settles. This shadow of the bear draws photographers who line up along Highway 64 to witness nature's own animation. Cameras ready to go. Viewing is free, but traffic can be heavy during peak times, so locals recommend lesser-known overlooks for safer, less crowded experiences. Fact 30. Linville Caverns, the only show cave. North Carolina's only professionally run show cave, Linville Caverns, is located deep under the shady Dolomite Formation beneath Humpback Mountain. Stalactite, stalagmites, flowstone in a subterranean stream where eyeless fish have evolved to constant. Darkness are among the basic karsted features found in the caverns, which were discovered by fishermen in 1822 after they witnessed trout disappearing into a rock face. During winter, colonies of three-colored bats hibernate inside, hanging from the ceiling in tight clusters. To prevent the spread of deadly white nose syndrome, visitors have to step through decontamination mats before entering. Tours here reveal something you almost never see in North Carolina: true karsted geology carved into limestone instead of the hard igneous and metamorphic rock that dominates the state. Inside, the air never changes. It stays a steady 52-degree year-round, cool enough to feel like autumn in July and warm enough to feel like spring in January. Fact 29. The mountains that grow their own forests. Hidden in North Carolina's northwest, the Amphibolite Mountains are unlike any other in the Appalachians. Their dark calcium-rich rock breaks down into alkaline soil, a geological curveball in a region known for acidity. That tiny chemical difference changes everything. It allows lies, airs, and rare wildflowers to bloom that can't survive anywhere else in the state. In summer, mountaintop bulbs explode into carpets of color above 5,000 feet, and geologists study the rock. Botists study the plants. Together, they prove that even chemistry can sculpt the land. Fact 28. 73 peaks above 6,000 Awad FT. Did you know that North Carolina's portion of the Blue Ridge Mountains contains 43 peaks above 6,000 FT in elevation? So, when combined with nearby Tennessee summits that straddle the state line, the southern Appalachians flex over 70 peaks above this threshold. That's more high peaks than anywhere else in the eastern United States. Mountains like Mount Mitchell, Clingman's Dome, and Ron High Knob support spruce fir forests that look like the boreal forests of Canada, complete with cold-adapted species like red squirrels and northern saw wet owls. Hiking above 6,000 FT offers significantly cooler temperatures, often 10 to 20 degrees lower than the valleys below, and on clear days, views that stretch for dozens of miles. It's the closest thing the East has to alpine terrain, and it's all concentrated in western North Carolina. Kinda makes you wonder why Virginia earned the nickname Mountain State and not North Carolina. Fact 27. Moving the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. Cape Hatteras Lighthouse. The tallest brick lighthouse in the United States at 208 FT once stood dangerously close to the Atlantic Ocean. By the 1990s, erosion had brought the waves to within 120 FT of the foundation, threatening to topple this 129-year-old beacon. In 1999, engineers accomplished the seemingly impossible. They moved the entire lighthouse and its surrounding keeper quarters 2,900 FT inland using a system of hydraulic jacks, steel beams, and rollers. The move took 23 days and made Cape Hatteras the tallest brick structure ever relocated. The lighthouse now stands safely inland. For now, though, erosion continues its relentless work. The successful move proved that sometimes the best way to preserve history is to literally pick it up and carry it to safety. Fact 26. Blue ghost fireflies. In certain mountain forests of North Carolina, usually in May and June, you might encounter one of nature's most absurd displays, the blue coast firefly, official name Phocis reticulata. So, what's so great about these guys? Well, unlike typical fireflies that flash yellow signals, male blue ghosts emit a steady bluish-white glow as they fly low through the forest floor, creating the appearance of tiny floating spirits. The glow can look bright green up close due to how human eyes perceive color at low light levels. These fireflies inhabit the southern Appalachians, particularly in DuPont State Recreational Forest and the Great Smoky Mountains. Fact 25. The lakes that shouldn't exist. In Bladen County, dozens of perfectly oval lakes lie scattered through pine forest like dark mirrors dropped from the sky. These are the Bladen Lakes formed inside ancient Carolina bays, whose origins are still yet unknown. The water runs black with tannins from decaying plants, and paddlers drift through quiet corridors of cypress and moss. Gators hang out on fallen logs. Fish ripple the surface, and the mystery deepens with every reflection. It's one of the most hauntingly beautiful environments in the Southeast, shaped by a question no one's answered yet. Fact 24. The hidden arches of the Piedmont. You don't have to go to Utah to find some stone arches. They're hiding in North Carolina's backyard, along quiet river bluffs in the Piedmont. Thin layers of sandstone and quartzite have been carved by water and frost into delicate natural bridges. One of the best lies above the Rocky River in Stanley County, where a small window in the rock frames a view of the forest beyond. These formations are rarely marked or publicized, too fragile for crowds, too subtle for guidebooks. They're a quiet reminder that erosion works miracles, just slower than we like to watch. Fact 23. Where ice meets fire on the Parkway. The Blue Ridge Parkway isn't one climate, it's a dozen. At Grandfather Mountain, winds have hit 124 meth, strong enough to bend trees sideways and glaze them in ice. Yet just a few miles away, rhododendrons, shrubs, or small trees of the heath family bloom in sun-warmed coves, and fog settles over bogs that never freeze. On the same day, you can scrape frost from your windshield at dawn and hike in short sleeves by noon. This spine of road crosses weather zones stacked like geological layers, a moving line between two worlds. Fact 22. The mountains that never dry. At the top of the Balsam Range, the clouds never really leave. Fog drifts through spruce and fir forests that look more like the Pacific Northwest than the South. Moss carpets the trunks, and somewhere beneath it all lives a spider small enough to fit on a dime. The endangered spruce fir moss spider found nowhere else on Earth. Acid rain and invasive insects have scarred parts of this forest, leaving ghost gray snags among living green. Hike here on a foggy day, and you'll understand why it feels less like a mountain range and more like a dream you weren't supposed to find. Fact 21. Whispering waterfalls of DuPont State Forest. Basically Instagram gold for waterfall chasers. DuPont State Recreational Forest packs a ridiculous concentration of cascades into one area. Triple Falls, High Falls, and Bridal Veil Falls tumble over granite domes, creating wide-tiered spectacles famous enough for the Hunger Games and the Mohicans. Walk behind the curtain at Bridal Veil, wade in Hooker Falls on hot days, or just snap 1,000 photos. The forest protects critical headwater streams feeding the Little River, ensuring crystal clear water and thriving wild trout. Easy trails plus Hollywood-worthy scenery equals North Carolina's most photographed natural playground. Fact 20. The wall that splits two worlds. Where the Piedmont ends and the Blue Ridge Mountains begin, the earth simply folds upward. The Blue Ridge Escarpment climbs over 2,000 ft in just a few miles, a vertical ramp that wrings rain from the air. Moist winds rise, cool, and break into waterfalls that feed some of the richest forests in the east. In places like Table Rock and Caesar's Head, the land drops away so suddenly it feels like the continent forgot to smooth its edges. From above, you can see both worlds at once, the flat land stretching east and the mountains holding the sky. Fact 19. Alligator River's Northern Reptiles. Established in 1984, Alligator River National Wildlife Refuge hosts one of the northernmost gator populations in America. because apparently some alligators didn't get the memo about staying in Florida. These cold-hardy reptiles survive winter freezes by entering brumation, basically reptile hibernation. But the real stars, endangered red wolves, one of their last wild strongholds on Earth. Winter brings tundra swans and snow geese by the thousands, creating a bizarre mashup where southern gators and Arctic birds share the same zip code. It's nature's way of saying geography is just a suggestion. Fact 18. The ancient Cape Fear River. The Cape Fear River, not just the setting of a terrifying movie, is North Carolina's only major river flowing directly into the Atlantic. Instead of coasting through an estuary first, for centuries, it served as a highway for Native Americans and colonists, and its basin contains some of the state's oldest river terraces. The Cape Fear predates the modern coastline itself, once flowing through a scenery hundreds of feet lower during Ice Age sea level drops. Today, its tidal brackish lower reaches support unique salt-tolerant plant communities. The ominous name, it comes from Cape Fear at the river's mouth, a treacherous navigation point that genuinely terrified early sailors. Fact 17. The forest that time forgot. Tucked into North Carolina's far southwest, the Joyce Kilmer Memorial Forest protects one of the last old growth cove hardwood forest in the eastern United States. Towering tulip poplars rise more than 100 ft, their trunks wider than cars. Some are over 400 years old, survivors from a time before the first sawmill ever reached the Appalachians. Streams wind between their roots, forming deep, cold pools locals call bear pits, where bears actually cool off on scorching summer days. The forest hums with the sound of dripping leaves and distant water. It's not just protected land, it's living memory. A rare glimpse of what the eastern United States once looked like when nature was still in charge. Fact 16. Unusual pronghorn fossils in the Triassic basins. What was North Carolina doing 225 million years ago? Definitely not growing tobacco. Durham and Chatham Counties' Triassic basins reveal a world where the Piedmont hosted rift valleys as supercontinent Pangaea tore itself apart. Paleontologists have uncovered early reptiles and mammal-like creatures preserved in fine-grained mudstones, some with actual skin impressions intact. Eoraptor-like critters, early dinosaur relatives skewered through ancient river floodplains where today's gentle hills now roll. These fossil sites make Central North Carolina a Triassic paleontology hotspot, proof that this land once belonged to a seriously different world. Fact 15. Extreme temperature fluctuations. North Carolina's mountains have serious mood swings. Spring days can dump snow on 5,000 FT peaks, while alleys bloom in foothills just 20 meters away. Temperature inversions trap cold air in valleys, creating frost pockets that freeze on summer nights, while ridgetops stay balmy. Downslope foehn winds, locals call them mountain waves, can spike Piedmont temperatures by compressing and warming air as it goes down. Microclimates vary by 20 degrees Fahrenheit within a few miles. You might need a parka at the summit and shorts in the valley on the same hike. Pack layers. All the layers. Fact 14. Rhododendron hell. On the map, it's green. In person, it's a wall. In western North Carolina, thicket of rhododendron and mountain laurel form thick, twisting jungles that early. Settlers nicknamed rhododendron hell. Try to hike through and you'll find branches locked like chainmail, forcing you to crawl under or claw your way through. Visibility drops to feet. Bears den inside. The air stays cool and damp even in midsummer. It's one of Appalachia's strangest microhabitats, beautiful from the outside, brutal from within, proof that paradise sometimes hides teeth. Fact 13. The ghost squirrels of Briard. In the mountain town of Brevard, squirrels aren't gray, they're white. A small population of eastern gray squirrels here carries a recessive gene that gives them pale fur and dark eyes, making them look like snowballs with tails. Locals trace their origins to a carnival truck crash in 1949 that supposedly set a few loose. Whether or not that story is true, the town embraced them. There's now a white squirrel festival, local laws that protect them, and even a squirrel patrol. Walk through town and you might spot one darting across a power line. Nature's glitch turned hometown mascot. Fact 12. The mountains that refuse to die. The Piedmont looks gentle, but scattered across it are stony survivors from a vanished world. These are the Monadnocks, lone hills of ancient rock that resisted erosion while everything around them wore away. Pilot Mountain, Crowder's Mountain, and King's Mountain all stand as remnants of mountain ranges that once towered thousands of feet higher. Their soils are thin, acidic, and harsh, supporting tough oak and pine communities that cling to the rock. Even their air is different, cooler, windier, a few degrees out of sync with the land below. Each one is a fossil in plain sight, a fragment of earth that simply refused to crumble. Fact 11. Surfs up on a lagoon. Remember Pamlo Sound from earlier? Well, there's more to it. When hurricanes or nor'ers hammer the coast, which happens a few times a year, Pamlico Sound does something weird. It becomes surfable. The sound's only 5 to 6 feet deep, but that 80-mile fetch lets wind-whiff waves build surprisingly high. Adventurous locals have paddled out after storms to ride breaking waves in a shallow lagoon, equal parts thrilling and sketchy. Submerged debris, shifty currents, and chaos make it dodgy for beginners, but those who've done it earn serious bragging rights. Fact 10. Tree Islands of the Lumber River Swamp. The Lumber River winds through enormous swamp forest dotted with tree-covered hummocks, called tree islands. During seasonal floods, these slightly elevated patches become dry refuges in a sea of submerged cypress and tupelo, precious high ground in an otherwise waterlogged world. Native Americans and early settlers used them as campsites and hunting bases while navigating the swamps, and similar formations throughout coastal plain wetlands still provide critical wildlife shelter during high water. Today, paddlers explore the Lumber River's blackwater channels, occasionally camping on these islands where Spanish moss drapes from ancient trees and frogs and owls soundtrack the night. Fact 9. Millennia-old beach ridges. Along the northern Outer Banks, a series of subtle beach ridges marks ancient shorelines from the Holy Sign epoch stretching back over 6,000 years. These ridges, formed as barrier islands, migrated landward with rising seas, each ridge representing a former coastline now stranded inland. The ridges show how much the islands have shifted over millennia. What's now maritime forest was once sandy beach. Archaeologists have discovered shell mittens and artifacts on some ridges, indicating that Native Americans inhabited the islands while they occupied these earlier positions. The ridges provide a geological timeline written in sand, showing that the Outer Banks have been on the move for thousands of years. Today's coastline is just the latest chapter in a story of constant change, a reminder that barrier islands are temporary features on geological timescales. Fact 8. Dynamic inlets and ghost islands. What if your island had an expiration date on the Outer Banks? Barrier islands shift so much that inlets and entire land masses appear and vanish within human lifetimes. Major hurricanes carve new inlets, sometimes isolating villages and creating temporary islands that last mere decades. Oregon Inlet has migrated miles southward since forming in 1846. Old maps show islands that no longer exist and inlets now sealed shut. Sand is constantly on the move. Roads wash out, property vanishes into the sea, and what was once waterfront becomes underwater real estate, which causes major problems for coastal communities like this. Fact 7. The marshes that never sleep. Behind the Outer Banks, vast salt marshes stretch for miles. Green plains of cordgrass that quietly outproduce. Rainforests. Each acre generates more biomass than almost any ecosystem on Earth, cycling nutrients through tides and roots. The marshes filter pollutants, blunt storm surges, and lock away carbon by the ton. To most people, they look like soggy meadows. In reality, they're engines. Natural factories working 24 hours a day, turning sunlight, salt, and sediment into life. Fact 6. Undersea canyons off Cape Hatteras. A short 40 miles southeast of Cape Hatteras, the continental shelf drops out of nowhere into the deep Atlantic, creating intense submarine canyons like Hatteras Canyon and Raleigh Canyon. These underwater gorges funnel nutrient-rich water from the depths toward the surface, creating upwelling zones that support wildly diverse marine life. The area is also where the cold Labrador Current meets the warm Gulf Stream, creating a collision zone of water masses that produce some of the most productive fishing grounds on the East Coast. Bluefin tuna, bellfish, and countless other species congregate here, drawn by the abundance of food. Scientists study the canyons for clues about past sea level changes in deep sea ecology. These hidden geological features shape the ocean environment just as dramatically as mountains shape the land. We just can't see them from the shore. Fact 5. The Raven Rock Collapse. Raven Rock is basically North Carolina's version of a geological crime scene. This 150 FT cliff towering above the Cape Fire River sits on the fall line where the Piedmont's hard bedrock meets the coastal plain's softer sediments. At some point, a massive chunk of cliff face collapsed into the river, creating the intense overhang visible today. The site was officially named Raven Rock in 1854 after the ravens that once roosted on its ledges. Exposed layers of shale and sandstone record ancient river environments from millions of years ago. Hike under the overhang and erosion's handiwork becomes clear, a reminder that even rock is temporary, reshaping itself one rockfall at a time. Fact 4. Fossil seashells in the mountains. On some North Carolina mountain peaks, hikers discover something unexpected: fossilized seashells and marine fossils embedded in limestone outcrops thousands of feet above sea level. These shells date to times when shallow seas covered parts of the region hundreds of millions of years ago before the Appalachians rose. Tectonic uplift thrust the ancient seafloor skyward, and erosion eventually exposed these marine fossils at elevations exceeding 5,000 spet. Finding a seashell on a mountaintop makes for a cool moment of perspective. These rocks remember when North Carolina's mountains were underwater, when sea creatures swam where hikers now walk. The fossils provide tangible evidence that the Appalachians weren't always mountains, and that geological time operates on scales that dwarf human history. Fact 3. Ancient lava flows beneath Asheville. What's Asheville built on? Ancient lava, actually. The city sits on top of layers of basalt and rhyolite formed 200 million years ago when supercontinent Pangaea ripped itself apart. Massive fissures opened in the crust. Lava oozed into rift basins, and volcanic rock now lies buried beneath downtown, occasionally discovered by drillers installing wells or digging foundations. These flows reveal that the Appalachian region once teemed with volcanic activity. Though the volcanoes are long extinct and heavily eroded, North Carolina's mountains have transformed from volcanic fire to glacial ice to today's peaceful forests. Fact 2. The bridges nature built. Hidden deep in the gorges of western North Carolina are stone bridges sculpted not by engineers but by erosion itself. Streams tunneled beneath solid rock, carving arches that now span waterfalls and ravines. Some are so subtle that hikers walk across them without realizing they're suspended over empty space. The largest near Hickory Nut Gorge towers high above the creek that carved it, a rare and fleeting structure that will one day collapse like all the rest. In geological time, even bridges fall. Fact 1. Coastal Plain Marine Fossil Treasury. As we already mentioned, North Carolina's coastal plain is a paleontologist's dream. And here's more proof of that. The plain is buzzing with sedimentary layers packed with marine fossils spanning over 100 million years. Cretaceous deposits include 4 major formations extending from I-95 to the coast, while the Castle Hayne Formation from about 50 million years ago contains bivalves, gastropods, corals, fish bones, and shark teeth deposited when the shoreline reached west of Raleigh. Phosphate mines allow collectors to readily pick up echinoids. Again, shark teeth and occasional marine mammal remains. Almost every major river and creek east of Interstate 95 has exposure where fossils can be found, with specimens ranging from 10,000 years old to more than 600 million years old. These ancient seabeds reveal that much of eastern North Carolina spent millions of years underwater, home to prehistoric sharks, whales, and countless marine creatures before emerging as dry land. What about 50 absurd facts about Montana that sound fake but aren't? Subscribe to our channel Earth Explorer Hub for more interesting facts around the Woolard.